Unit 6, Skill 3, creating polynomial functions. So the essential question, how can we write polynomial equations when given zeros and a single point? So we're going to start off with a pretty simple example. Write an equation of a polynomial that has roots of x equals -2 and x equals 4. So here we go, x equals -2, x equals 4. We're asking ourselves, where'd that come from? So we had to have two factors that it came from. It's pretty straightforward. X and x, we must have had an x plus 2 as a factor and an x minus 4 as a factor. Now where did that come from? Well, imagine you had it the reverse way. We had something like this. We had just had a problem that we factored, and it looked like this right over here. So what would we do? We would set it equal to 0. X minus 4 equals 0, and then we would subtract the 2 and get x equals -2 and x equals 4. So all we're really doing is doing the reverse direction of this. We're starting here and working back to this. So here we have it. Now we have our factors. Well, if we have our factors, we still have to keep solving it. Let me get rid of that equals 0. Okay, so we have to multiply it out. And that's exactly what we're going to do, double distribute. So we multiply it in to both parts. We get x squared. When we multiply the x times the -4, we get minus 4x. And then the 2 times x is a plus 2x. When we multiply the 2 times the -4, we get minus 8. So, clean things up a little bit, combine like terms. Totally okay with you skipping that step there, first step in red, and jumping right to this. I think you can multiply x times 4, get -4 in your head, 2 times x, get positive 2x, combine them for a minus 2x. In your head and do it just like that. That's fine. So there's our equation. All right, we're going to say that equals f of x. So f of x is equivalent to that. That is the equation that will have roots at -2 and 4. And we're done. Of course, that would be way too easy, and unfortunately, let's face it, the Regents is never going to give us something that easy. So let's do example 2, where it gets a little bit harder. So write an equation of a polynomial that has roots at x equals -2 and x equals 4, and passes through the point 6, 4. So, here's the deal. Every single one of these, or I'm sorry, this problem up here, has probably an infinite number of answers that will go through these 2 points. Okay? It's only when we put a specific point value, like 6, 4 on here, that we can come up with a very exact equation. Now this is the general equation right up here for this guy. We could have picked a specific point for it to go through and written a different parabola. But let's focus on this one now. So we have x equals -2 and 4 again, and now we have a specific point of 6, 4. So start out the same way. We had to have x equals -2 and x equals 4, which gives us our factors of x plus 2 again and x minus 4. But like I said, there's actually an infinite number of answers depending on what the ordered pair is that we pick that last point. And this time we chose 6, 4. So what we have to know is that the equation typically will have some constant that we're multiplying by it. But we don't always see a 1x squared minus 2x minus 8. In fact, we can multiply this by 2, by 3, by 4, this whole equation, and change the value of it, which will then change what other point it goes through. And they all will end up going through this same thing. So, what are we going to do when we have this? Well, we have to figure out what that a value is. And they've given us everything we need to do it. They've given us 6, 4. So, we are going to plug in the given point, x comma y, for the x and the f of x. Because remember, y and f of x are the same. So, okay, that means here's my x, here is my y, here is my x, here is my y. We're just going to plug in. So we have 4 equals the a, and then x we said was 6, so plus 2, and then, come on, 6 minus 4. From there, we're going to solve. So 4 equals a times 6 plus 2 is 8, times 6 minus 4 is 2. So multiply it all out, we get 4 equals 16a. It's not going to work out so nice there. It's going to give us a fraction, which we typically have, so don't be afraid when you see that. dividing by 16 gives us a equals. You don't have to clean up the fraction, make it 1/4. I typically like to. If it's a multiple choice answer on the regions, they're going to have 1/4 instead of 4/16. So you've now found your a value, and you have your original equation. So we solve for a. That is the next step in the process. Now we're going to write the final equation with the a plugged in. Obviously the b and the c would be right here and here. So we're going to plug them in. All right. So f of x is going to equal the 1/4 x plus 2 x minus 4. So on a little aside, kind of a nice to know, because this isn't really going to take very long to do, we have it crossing at -2 and 4. The only thing that's really changing about this graph, all right, since we all know that it's a positive parabola, it's looking up, right, kind of looks like this. Okay. Wow, that's interesting. Let's try that again. Let's see if it'll work this time. There we go. So there's the parabola, right? That's your basic parabola that we have from part question number 1. When we multiply that by 1/4, we multiply it by 3 or by 6 or by 8, and we have different values for that a value right here. All it's going to do is change the look of the graph just a little bit. So maybe it makes the graph just a little bit more narrower right at the beginning, right, like that, and it makes it go down further. It has a lower minimum. And that's pretty much it. So, you know, you multiply by 1/4 or 1/3, it might make it a little bit different like this, okay? And we're not changing it too much. Notice it's still going through those same points of -2 and +4. We're just changing the other point that it goes through, which I believe was right here. It was that 6,4. So by changing that point, 6,4, to a different number, we can change what this a value is, which then just changes the way the graph looks. But notice it still has the same answers, which is the important part. Alright, so I'm going to erase this graph real quick. So I'm going to show you a graphic solution here. So for the graphic solution, step 1 is pretty simple. You still do the exact same thing. You see that it crosses at -2 and 4, and you write your factors. So f of x is going to equal x plus 2 multiplied by the x minus 4. But we're going to find the a different way because some people kind of mess this up. The next step is to graph this in the calculator. So go to your calculator, graph in this equation, and then you're going to go to your table. Okay? And in your table, you're looking for one specific point, and that point is the point that they tell you. So they tell you it has to go through 6,4. So for it to go through 6,4, I'm going to see what mine does now. So I'm going to write 6,4 here so I can remember and I can see it. Alright, so I'm going to go to the calculator, I look at the graph, and I see that it actually goes through 6,16. So this 4 is what I need it to go through because the question says it's supposed to go through 6, 4. But this 16 is what it's now going through. So step 3 is to figure out your now. It's going through the 16, and I don't want it to. Step 4 is to simply do the need over the now. And that's going to give you your a value every single time. So if you realize that you're messing up here, and you're just messing up the basic math up there, something screwing you up, you can solve it this way. So the need is going to be 4 over the now, which is 16. So that simplifies to 1/4. Notice the a value is exactly the same. A is 1/4, a is 1/4. Last step 5, write your equation. Of course you have to have the pen out to do that. So step 5 is f of x equals the 1/4 in place of the a. Then you have your x plus 2 and your x minus 4. Alright, let's move on to the last question. Okay, so the following represents a quartic polynomial. Alright, you need to understand that quartic means degree 4. That interruption was brought to you by Mr. DePeace. Alright, so anyway, so quartic means degree 4. So given that the polynomial below goes through the point 1, -8, and that's important because, well, you really can't tell that. So 1, -8 is kind of an important number there. Okay, write the equation for the polynomial in factored form. We first have to take a look at the crosses versus bounces. So I take a look right here. I have a cross, at negative 5, so x equals negative 5 is crossing. I have it crossing here at 0, so x equals 0. That should be pretty easy. And then again right here at x equals 3. Now we're going to find the factors, which would be x plus 5, x, obviously for x equals 0, and x minus 3. Here is the problem. That x really should be written in front. Let's rewrite it. And then I noticed something else. I noticed that, hey, this should have a degree of 4. And I only count the exponents to be 1, 2, 3. So I got to realize that there was a bounce in here someplace, and a bounce has a minimum exponent of 2. So that's across 1, that's across 1. So these guys should both be 1s. And that one should actually look like a 5. And then right here, it should bounce. So I should have a minimum exponent of 2, or 4, or 6, or 8. Since it says it's degree 4 total, I have my total of 2 plus 1 making 4. So I now have my equation of f of x. Alright, again there's supposed to be an a value, so I'm going to put that a value in front right here. It's a different color. So I have to figure out what that a value is, and the way we're going to do that is by using this point right here again that we have, the 1, negative 8. So we're going to plug in, we have x is 1, and the y value is negative 8, so we end up with negative 8 equals a times 1 for the x, multiplied by 1 plus 5, and then 1 minus 3 squared. Again, don't type in that 1 minus 3 squared in the calculator. Not going to be what you want. Negative 2 squared, the calculator will tell you it's negative 4 when it is not. So negative 8 equals a multiplied by 1 times, that's a positive 1, I'm sorry, 1 times 6, wow, and 4, which gives us 24a equals negative 8. So we're going to end up with a equals negative 8 over 24, which is negative 1/3. You can leave it like that. So now we have to write the equation for f of x is negative 1/3. Plug that in for a. Then we have to have our x. Apologize. So 1/3 multiplied by x multiplied by the x plus 5 multiplied by x minus 3 squared. And there we have it. Alright, so we're going to go over the graphic solution, which is a nice way of solving it. If you're a person that is messing up this algebra up here that I did in green, you can jump from the part where I was in red right here, okay, down to here. Okay, so let's say you get this stage of the game, you realize it's crossing at x plus 5, you realize it's crossing at x, or we could also write x plus 0, another way of writing it. And then you see that there's the bounce right here at the 3, so that's x minus 3 is going to be squared. So across is 1, across is 1, the bounce is going to be the exponent of 2, because it has to have a power of 4, because it says it is a quartic. Anyways, so if you're not so good with the algebra here, messing around with the numbers and you just continuously screw it up, you can do the graphic solution, which is pretty short and sweet. So it has to go through this point. This is the need point. It has to go through the y value of negative 8. So this is our need. And we're going to find what it is now. So you're going to go to the calculator and you're going to type this equation in. Right? Go to f of x, type it in, go to the table, hit Control T after you've typed in the equation. You look at the table and you go to where the x value is 1. So when the x value is 1, unfortunately we are not at the negative 8. So where are we now? We are at 24. So that's going to help us figure out what this a value is. Okay? The next step. Alright, so this is our now. That it is what it is right now, and we need it to be right over here, 8. Alright, come on, scroll down. So step 4 is to simply put a equals the need over what it is now. So the need is negative 8. What it is now is 24. And when you type that in and do the negative 8 over 24, you get negative 1/3 for a, which, conveniently, if you look right up here, is what we got by doing all that algebra. Now, if you're a person who can do all the algebra, hey, do it. If you don't make mistakes, great. But if you're a person who's been consistently making mistakes, or you realize you are, you can always do this graphic method, which is pretty straightforward. So now we write the new equation. I don't have any room to write it, but I'll write it down here anyways. It is f of x equals, we're going to put that negative 1/3 in place of the a, so it's negative 1/3. All right, again, I'm not going to write the x plus 0. You could. I'm going to bring that up front, though. So it's x, and then x plus 5, and then x minus 3 squared. Don't forget to write your summary. Show us your practice. Take the quiz. Thank you.